if there should be any changes or whether we can simply approve them as they are. So that, I mean, I think that's the critical piece of this for the authority, and I don't know that we can approve that on a contingent basis.
A lot of the recommendations are not goal attained type of recommendations, but ongoing recommendations, and I know.
I'm thinking they may not need change.
I, at the 1 million foot level, I don't think the recommendations need to be changed.
Okay.
Separately, after we have this discussion, we may as a board wish to task the consortium to determine ways to monitor progress on those recommendations so that we could have a report card next year's report on how we've been coming along. That's a suggestion I put forth to the rest of the board as a possible way of keeping the recommendations more active from year to year in annual report. It's just something to consider. And if you guys like that, then we can take that off on a separate board. But I think the recommendations are go and do good work and make this important, and they don't seem to be kind of very operational as much as they are aspirational.
Well, do you think we need to lead in with that first sentence about the 5.8%, given the fact that there's been some general changing of that? I mean, couldn't we just start our sentence by the authority supports Governor McAuliffe and Reed on a reference to our evaluating Virginia's nuclear generation effort?
Yes, that's right.
I think I would delete the first sentence and just keep the second one, because it's still true, as is that should view nuclear assets in either capacity and recognize us and support us in order to establish the Commonwealth as a national global leader of nuclear energy science technology. Which, by the way, when you go and you speak to other states about what's happening here, when I'm talking to the other governors, a few of them, and I mentioned what Virginia Energy Consortium Authority was doing, they were like, do I need an entity like this? And I said, I don't think you need one as robust, because I explained the uniques of the Commonwealth, and I said, by the way, Governor McAuliffe wants to be number 1, so unless you want to be 2 through 47, no, you may not start this, because I think he would probably have me arrested on the way back to Washington. But nonetheless, what they're asking about, and I'll bring that back to you next year, is they're asking if there should be some kind of other state approach that's like this, and maybe some kind of national organization that grows out of this to acknowledge and recognize, especially the 30 states that generate energy from nuclear, and maybe the other ones that utilize it, and figure out some way to do that. So I'm planning on getting with Marshall, and once again, a place where the scope's that big can become that big. But there is a lot of traction in the other states to recognize that Virginia is the most unique state in the country. And that's certainly the message I keep giving, is that while you have some nuclear capacity, you don't have near the unique capability that Commonwealth has related to what it does. And so when they're like, wow, I had no idea. So what we're really doing is we're advertising to the rest of the world that the Commonwealth is the THE state for nuclear. I hope that sets well with most of you. So what else other than that deletion of that sentence?
So I guess,
Let me make sure I understand, because we're talking about recommendations, and there's 3 bullet points in the summary, but there's 6
Yeah.
more detail, and I want to make sure we're talking about which set of recommendations. I mean, the summary is a 3-bullet summary of what the 6 are, but, yeah, I've got it here. Yeah.
well, I know at the end of the nuclear energy recommendations section, the 3rd bullet point is the mirror image of the first one on the first page. So that first sentence can be stricken as well with regard to the 5.8% of the state's zero carbon emitting nuclear.
I think you need to repeat it and leave it there, but I would suggest you move it to the first under number 6
Okay.
section, just make it number 1.
So that it
Don't
flows?
delete it, yeah, because that's inconsistent. If it's not in the text of the body, then there's no reason for it to be in
Sure.
the summary.
Right, exactly.
So don't delete it.
Oh, no, I meant deleting that first sentence from the bullet point regarding the 5.8% state zero carbon emitting.
Oh, that one. Yeah, just a second. Okay.
So just to make sure that the sentence on the section on the first page mirrors the section on the end.
That's actually better. Yeah, that means you actually know how to write it.
Yeah, now it's making me wondering why we have 6, but only 3 in the summary. All 6 of these, they're not all created equal, or?
Yeah, I don't think if we have recommendations, they should all be in
Yeah, I'm
some.
beginning to think we should
It's
put
the
on
most
6
important
in
thing.
the summary, because the summary could be a little bit larger. Does anybody have a problem with putting all 6 in the summary?
I mean, if they were more meaty in terms of we want you to do this
Right.
session, we might limit it to 1 or 2. But because they're all sort of more general,
There's strategic
Forward-looking.
recommendations and tactical recommendations.
I think we include them all.
And make sure they mirror each other in terms of
Sure.
order of appearance,
Yes.
that's all.
Marshall, while you're sitting there, should there be any kind of recommendation 7, about continued state support and recognition of the actions of the consortium itself instead of just what we're saying here? Because we talk about the authority, recognize and support the authority efforts, but we don't say anything. I know the consortium was formed by the authority, I'm just trying to make sure the consortium gets its due.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good idea, and just general to have recognition of the nuclear issues that may be identified by the consortium that would benefit from some state attention.
Okay.
Not to say this or that, just say, in other words, it's a message that says we're out there looking for what we need to do in a way that the Commonwealth needs to understand and recognize, and then act accordingly to support.
It's almost a
recognition.
sentence saying-
Recognize and assist.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that, I agree, I think that ties in one of the most significant accomplishments in 2015 was standing that up and getting Marshall in place, and it doesn't make any sense then to ignore it.
So we would put in number 7, if it's okay, it would be like we did in number 1, where it says recognize and support authority efforts to, maybe say recognize and support consortium efforts to address specific issues which support the authority in meeting its goals, something of that nature?
I would say as identified
Okay.
by the consortium and/or the authority, you can do it that way. Whoever identifies the issue, you need to be paying attention to it.
You might want to come up with some sort of one sentence or even phrase summary that distinguishes the consortium from the authority. In other words, the consortium of Virginia's private sector participants in the industry, or something that makes it clear that when you support the authority, you're supporting a state entity that is providing recommendations to you. When you support the consortium, you're supporting the private sector.
Which is probably funded.
Right, which is
With
privately
no
funded.
public
and- Yeah.
Private sector and universities.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Chris is a little bit of drafting and then recirculation.
Sure.
And we will have to approve
bad
that
trying
one.
to write it too with you
though,
right
because
now.
we won't be able to get together again for vote. so.
Which is why we need to take the vote today,
Right.
even with the contingent upon the approval of languages. So right now, in number 7, I would have something like recognize and support the consortium activities, efforts as identified by the authority and/or the consortium to support the goal of establishing the Commonwealth, and then the end of the sentence like we did in number 1, as the and specific recommendations and our actions will include things related to the private sector, universities, workforce, and things of that nature. Just added a couple of things that are specific that you want to get their attention on now. And if you can give us that list, if that's acceptable to the board, we can include that in recommendation number 7, put it both in the summary and also in the document.
I can work with Chris. and-
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's enough for us to all understand the substance of the recommendation. I don't think it's
Sure.
in any way controversial
Agreed.
enough to need to wordsmith it.
In my view, I agree with that.
Excellent. Does anybody not agree with that? One of the things I'd like to do, if it's acceptable too, is just to add some of the activities that the Virginia Nuclear Consortium Authority is participating in as far as some of the national efforts to recognize the benefits of nuclear, so that the governor and the state recognizes that we are an active player in what's going on nationally, and additionally what's going on in the Commonwealth. Like, is that an acceptable concept to everybody?
Yeah, it's just a summary of our activities this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Don, I will say one note of caution, I don't disagree, but I want to make sure that we, as the consortium, or as the authority, distinguish the work of your other hat, in that we don't do what ANS is doing, but we are aware of it, and we're being informed by it through your role.
Exactly.
But I don't want.
I won't even
I
have my
don't-
name in there, it'll
Yeah,
just say that.
I don't want the authority to somehow be looked at as a subset of the AMS
I
activity.
understand. I don't want that either.
And I want the
Maybe
public
a
to be aware of that as
cooperating
well.
with,
Yeah.
contributing to.
You know, cooperating with and contributing to the activities where appropriate,
Right, that kind of.
so that it's, you know, statement enough and agreed. I don't, in fact, if I were king, this wouldn't have been
Or
an A.
partnering with.
Yeah.
Even if
Partnering
we're-
is a good word.
Partnering is a good
All right.
word.
This wouldn't have been an AMS subcommittee.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
I would like to include Virginia Areas Consortium, which is organizing international workshops every 2 years. We hosted one here in Richmond last year,
right.
and we will be hosting in 2016 in Huddersfield University in the United Kingdom. They offered to host it. And 2018, we are going to bring it back to Jefferson Lab. Those are the plans.
Would you write up something, give us to it like that?
Yes, yes, sure.
Perfect. I think that would be a great idea.
I think partnering with to accomplish, partnering with A to accomplish B is good
We don't even
language.
have to
and-
say which one's what. We can just say that the authority is cooperating with other national organizations to enhance and improve the voice related to nuclear science and technology, not only in the Commonwealth, but also in the entire country, and the other nation. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Okay, then we'll come up with something that's very vanilla like that, okay? The only thing I just wanted to do was to make sure that the folks realize that we are not just looking, while Virginia is our
No,
focus and should be, it's part of our goal, it's part of our responsibility, we have to acknowledge that there's a world outside of it.
Yeah, I
The
think
state.
that's an extremely valuable point. So I'm glad that's brought up.
Thank you, and I appreciate your willingness to do that, because like I say, all I want to do is make sure that they see us as a very valuable activity.
In fact, to recognize that particular distinction, we should probably include advancing Virginia, advancing Virginia in the context of, because, really we're engaging to make sure that Virginia is included, Virginia is recognized, folks understand the assets we have, so I think we want to be sure that we are clearly promoting Virginia's nuclear industry in the context of those efforts.
Got it, advancing, the Commonwealth in the context of what is happening in the rest of the nation. Okay. I've got several actions here to give you information. Okay. And then we're also going to get information from Government. Is there any other information or clarifications or things that you believe are required to this document before we actually get a motion, then a second if we can, and then discussion, and then a vote?
Confirm that the order is as it appears in the first reference or the second reference. In one place we have recognize and support establishing the Commonwealth as national global leader as recommendation 1. But in the first reference to the recommendations, which will be expanded to include all 6, that is the third
I
reading.
understand. Yes. Order them in the same, both in the document and the summary, what you're
Right,
saying.
and the numbered goals is the order. We all agree? Where number 1 is to recognize and support authority efforts to establish the Commonwealth as a national and global leader.
Yes. Well, let's revisit that just to be sure. I agree that's the first one. Do you agree that the second one is the second one? Why don't you all take a look for a moment at all the way, if you look at the nuclear energy recommendations at the very last 2 pages, and with the addition of the 7th one about recognizing support the consortium actions and efforts as identified by the authority and consortium in support of this, as the 7th one, as currently the 7th, decide whether or not, because if we get these in the order we want, then we'll make the summary document in that same order. So currently, I agree with you, sir. That certainly the first one should be recognized, support the authority, efforts to establish the Commonwealth as a national global leader. The second one talks about regulatory certainty and long lead. Should that be number 2? If somebody's going to read these as being an order of priority or significance?
I'm not so sure.
I don't think when we did these, we had
We did
a
not.
concept
We did
of
not.
significance of order,
We did
but I certainly agree the first one has to be that first one. The real question is, do we need to do something with 2 through 7?
We're changing the bullets instead of numbers.
That's a good suggestion.
But you still
You
need
okay
to
with
put
that?
them in
Change them to
order.
bullets instead of numbers, or no?
Yeah.
And then you can put them bullets, but I think that you still wanna put them in an order that makes it flow at the importance or the priority maybe, regardless which way you do it.
And if I was gonna do anything, I'm not so sure 4 and 5 should be moved up.
Yeah, 1,
Two
4,
and three.
5.
Yeah, I'm thinking that 4 should be 2.